Welcome to A Seat at the Table. I am your host, Holly Cotton, and I am so excited about our episode this week because every week I want to be the most impactful host that I can be. I am joined today by Ted James, former Biden appointee, candidate for mayor president in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So, Ted is taking time out of his busy schedule to come on and break down this week's part of Project 2025. So, welcome, Mr. James.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate it. And thank you for elevating this conversation. It's vitally important that you use your platform to talk about these issues. So I certainly appreciate the invitation, but I really appreciate you breaking this Project 2025 down.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's very important because people don't understand that Project 2025 is a threat to so many daily things that we deal with and all of the different parts and how you don't realize that all of those things are intertwined. You don't realize how affirmative action works. You don't realize how voter rights works, reproductive health, environmental issues. People don't think that those things are applicable to them. So that's why I want to make sure that we break it down into easy terms, understandable terms, so
Mhm.
that people can realize how, even if it doesn't affect you, how it can affect your brother, sister, cousin, family member, friend, in-laws. Like everybody is affected by all of these parts of this project. So what I wanna do, Ted, is sort of use your experience and your expertise because I know that you did a lot of stuff with SBA and
Mhm.
you can attest to affirmative action. So
Yeah,
this week we're gonna talk about affirmative action. And let me just break it down first, the about what Project 2025 proposes, and then we'll go into the question that I need you to answer.
sounds good.
So Project 2025 proposes changes to affirmative action policies aiming to remove or reduce these measures in education and employment. And the project argues for a merit-based system that doesn't consider race or gender in admissions or hiring decisions. And by eliminating affirmative action, Project 2025 can limit efforts to address inequalities and ensure a diverse and inclusive environment. So, for people who are against affirmative action, or they may already think that a merit based system should be what we're using, what do you say to those people?
I will tell you that most of the people that claim to be against affirmative action are the direct beneficiaries of forms of affirmative action, right? When you look at the fact that we are not talking about the legacy system that has, it has been a part of higher education for as long as both of us have been alive. That creates opportunities for a small subset of people to be enrolled in certain universities. So when you talk about affirmative action and when you try to couch it under a merit base, you got to take a step back to recognize that not all local school districts are created equal. And some of us lived in communities where the school districts were purposefully disinvested in, right? So you can't even really look at merit on a fair scale, recognizing that all of us don't have a solid foundation, right? The legacy system allows those graduates and their families to continue to gain access to these universities. What we saw with the Supreme Court decision was that they didn't want people of color having regular, steady, equal access to systems of our education. And what it does, it impacts the workforce. Holly, I think you and I, you have such a strong social media presence. I think we've seen the effects of major brands when they don't have people of color working in their departments because they post things that they shouldn't post, right? They have campaigns that they shouldn't run with, and you will see. We asked the question. There's obviously not a person of color sitting in that room because they would have spoke some type of sense to a lot of what we're seeing in corporate America sometimes.
And I have a student that is coming from the University of Houston that's also going to be on the podcast as well, and he is African American. So I know that a lot of people that are parents believe that their children are getting into colleges on their own merit, right? Everyone is very competitive now. They
Mhm.
start, the Montessori schools when their kid is still in vitro. Like they're already pushing those kids before they come out. So you even have a lot of minority parents now that are basically saying that we don't even need affirmative action because my kid is performing where he needs to be. My kid had the education. He doesn't need affirmative action to save him. So whenever we're talking about those college students or students going off to college, what do you feel about that for the ones that think, "Oh, I don't even need affirmative action because my kid is going to do it on his own."
Yeah, I think that number one, as a parent, and I know you're a parent as well. Of course, we think our kids are the brightest people, the brightest students in the room. At the end of the day, we have to stop thinking about my, and start to think about us and we. Right. And I know that my daughter, as in my race, I talk a lot about literacy, and I talk about it because when my daughter was in, kindergarten, I was floored by some of the results that I saw with her first assessment. Between myself and her mom, we had resources to get her a reading coach, a tutor. 98% of the kids in Baton Rouge don't have that, right? So if I thought singularly about Harper, maybe I'd be one of those parents as well. The truth of the matter is, affirmative action is not about getting people things that they don't deserve. It's about creating an opportunity for them to take advantage of the things that we know they deserve because they've been purposefully locked out. So I would say to those parents that even though your kid is excelling, we know that in the African American community, our kids have to go after 10 to get two. Being great is not good enough, right? So it's not about your perfect baby, it's not about your smart kid. It's about a system that even though your kid had those high scores, they were denied an opportunity because of other children with lesser and lower scores that just didn't have the amount of melanin as your kid. So our higher achieving parents, we got to remember that we still live in a society that higher achieving people of color don't get the same opportunities.
And I'll tell you this because I know, Ted, you also, not just before your political career, you also were an attorney. So you can also attest to a lot of the things that happen on that side whenever
Sure.
we're talking about the law and the unfairly incarcerated minority men. And I have to explain that to my son all the time as well that, hey, listen, when you're with me, yes, they see you as Holly Cotton's son, but when you're not with me, they just see you as a black man. They see you as a threat. They don't know what your background is, your education is.
Mhm.
So, whenever we're talking about pulling affirmative action away, if that happens, if people are not going to be using that as a way to ensure fairness, what do you think are some other ways that we can implement to ensure that minorities do get a fair chance?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that on the higher education front, right? I'm a graduate, a two-time graduate of Southern, HBCU. For me, I've said to HBCUs all across the country, use this as an opportunity to go out there and market to those high achieving students of color and remind them that they've always had a place at home at an HBCU, and reverse the stigma that HBCUs aren't as good as some of the other universities. I will put my education up against anyone because I know that we may not have the stigma of greatness, but I know the greatness that was instilled in me, right? So I say to HBCUs all across the country, use this as a marketing tool to bring our babies back into the HBCU fold. I would also say that we just have to be very strategic about our access and opportunity. So if you can't use race, you can use geography, right? You can use census tracts, right? You can use historical data regarding certain communities, right? You can look at certain school districts you're coming from. And if you come from certain school districts, you can have a greater priority. Not saying that students in lower performing districts aren't capable, but we know that those students in lower performing districts have fewer resources. So if you were able to survive in those environments with fewer resources, then great. Holly, you mentioned my SBA experience. We had an issue where there's a major program in the SBA called the 8A program, and it's a program for businesses who want to do business with the federal government. So if you're engineer, right? If you're a contractor, right? You can get huge multi-million dollar contracts with the federal government. So the court used to allow us, or the Constitution, not the Constitution, the Supreme Court would allow us to say that you can be granted membership if you are socially or economically disadvantaged. And we can use race to basically say if you're African American, if you're Latino, you are socially or economically disadvantaged. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. So what the SBA did, we didn't end the program. We just asked applicants to submit narratives where you talk about your social disadvantage, you talk about your economic disadvantage. So we have to use the rules to benefit us, right? Because the rules are ever changing. And there are ways to determine someone's race outside of just asking, right? So ask to share experiences, and even with other organizations that have been denied opportunities to offer grants to women businesses of color just because that's what they wanted to do, because women businesses of color receive 1% of all of the capital out there. So we just have to be able to be more strategic in our approach.
So that also sort of segues me into my next question, Ted, because I also want to talk about your running for mayor
Mhm.
president of Baton Rouge. But I wanted to have one more discussion about people who are not from the South don't understand how the South works,
That's
right?
right.
Like,
Mhm.
so it's very it's very racially motivated in a
Mhm.
lot of cities.
Yeah.
And um I'm trying to be politically correct when I say it, but even in Baton Rouge,
Mhm.
Louisiana, all the southern states, right? And as someone who attended LSU, I remember being on LSU's campus. We were so diverse. It was
Mhm.
everything was there. Of course, we were still a minority. It's not like LSU today with all the
Yeah.
black folks wilding
Mhm.
out, but it was very, 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 there were like very few black people back then.
Yeah.
But it was as soon as you came out of the LSU gates, you were in South Baton Rouge, which was like everybody was saying, "Oh my gosh, it's very urban. You don't want to go out there. There's crime. It's this. It was a frowned
Mhm.
upon state." So
Yeah.
you have these little pockets in the South of where people think it's diverse because you're in this safe pocket, but then after
Mhm.
you get out of that pocket, you see that's the real city. So, as someone that is a political candidate that's running for mayor of a city and knowing that these challenges are there, whenever we're talking about affirmative action and diversity, what are some of the tactics and some of the, I guess, the beliefs or some of the political topics that you are trying to talk about and educate people about to make sure that we're not having just the pockets, but we're
Yeah.
making everything equal?
I'll tell you that it is a balancing act sometimes, right? We know, and I know there's some folks in the Carolinas that say they're in the South. We're in the deep South, right? We are in you talk about LSU, we were in school around the same time. When I graduated from college, they were still flying a purple and gold Confederate flag at LSU football games, right? And this
Mhm.
was, 20 some years ago, right? Now the students rose up and they made sure that that was no longer a practice, but this wasn't that long ago, right? The city the parish of East Baton Rouge Parish, we are very like we're even, right? It's a majority African American by only a slim majority. So what I've done is, we talk about the issues. I believe that are important to everyone, eliminating blight because blight drives crime, right? And we know that you went to LSU, and if you see the campus today does not look like the campus that you attended. LSU is its own city within the city, but right in the shadows of LSU is South Baton Rouge, where I went to school, where I grew up, where my family's from. And you see high concentrations of crime. You see the lack of a grocery store. You see folks that are relying on public transportation. And then on the mile on the other side, there's downtown, which is thriving. So you have this little pocket of South Baton Rouge lack of investment. So for me, I'm talking about the levels of investment, eliminating blight that we have not done a good enough job. This is student housing for those students that can't afford housing on campus, right? Making sure that we have reliable transportation for students who are working all across East Baton Rouge Parish, but they don't own a vehicle, right? When you talk about just the opportunities, there are some people that talk about eliminating blight because they live in this community and it is the right thing to do. What I've learned how to do is not everyone is going to be moved because it's the right thing to do. Most people, especially in politics, are not led by their heart, they're led by their pocketbook. So when you talk about it, you talk about it in a way of economic development. So, yes, eliminating blight reduces crime and puts people in better housing, but there are contractors who are going to get the contracts to eliminate blight. They're going to be rebuilding those houses. There are stores where people are going to have to buy lumber, right? There are educational systems that are going to have to train the workforce for these things. So we talk about it in terms of economics when we talk about education, right? A more educated community is a community that's less saddled with crime, right? More young people that we have honest conversations. Say, you know what, college may not be for you, right? When I graduated, my parents were like, "You going to college, or you might not breathe," right? So we reduce the stigma in saying that going to college isn't for everyone. So we have to create those opportunities where people graduate in Baton Rouge with a diploma and a credential, so they could go out there and work. Right? You were, as someone in the healthcare space like you were, or you are, the fastest growing industry in Baton Rouge is the healthcare sector and across the state. So how do we use the healthcare with all of the hospitals and the nursing schools here to create opportunities for young people, right? So it's jobs, and it's also, we know, in communities of color, especially in the deep south, health disparities are real, right? So it's pushing folks to a career that's also a service that will benefit the community at large. And it's just the way that you capture it, right? Like, my parents used to tell me when I was younger, they would put my medicine like next to like jelly. They would put a spoonful of jelly and have my medicine in it, right? So as a kid, I thought I was eating jelly, right? So you have to package things differently so people can receive it, right?
I love that. That's a great, yeah, that's how put it in a juice box or something.
Yeah, right. That's
And
right.
then and I always say, even as a college professor, I'm like, get a trade. Get a
That's it.
trade.
That's it.
You guys are here, as a nursing professor, I'm telling you, get a trade. And also, I would just like to correct Mr. James, how he was trying to put an age on me, talking about me being in school with him and 20 years ago. Y'all know I'm 25, so I'm gonna need Ted to be talking for himself. So, thank you, Ted, for explaining Project 2025 and how it relates to everyone. And what I want to also do is, because unfortunately I won't be here for your fundraiser that you're having in Houston this weekend, but I definitely want to give you a platform to
Yeah.
talk about it. And then for anyone who also is not here or maybe who isn't in Louisiana, what other ways can we support you?
Well, I appreciate that. We have a big game. Southern University is playing PV, so several of my friends in Houston are putting together a fundraiser for me on Friday. It's at 1614 Center Street in Houston. But come and join us on Instagram. I'm at Edward Ted James, or Ted James for Mayor. TedJames.com, ways to plug in. Folks ask, well, why are you doing a fundraiser all the way in Houston? Houston sends hundreds, if not thousands, of young people to East Baton Rouge Parish every year to attend to attend Southern and LSU. So for me, it's as Houston has been a pipeline, we want to make sure that those students have a safe and enjoyable experience in East Baton Rouge Parish. And quite honestly, I'm trying to poach some of them. So as we educate these Houston students, I want to make sure we keep them in East Baton Rouge Parish. So we appreciate you, and I hate that you won't be at the event, but I've always been a huge friend to Houston.
I love that. Okay, well, I had to, I was like, let's use this, make
That's
sure,
right.
how we could support, follow, like all of that. So thank you so much, Ted. And again, you guys, um, support him, follow. We love having the candidates coming in here to talk and educate, but also make sure you are also going out to vote
That's
as
right.
well, because we love that we can capitalize on their knowledge and absorb all of that information, but we have to vote to make sure that we are keeping them in those political offices.
That's right.
So thank you so much, Ted James, for
Thanks,
having a
Holly.
seat at the table.
Thank you.
This week, we will definitely be able to address that because, one, not only do I have a young person, but I also have someone that is the national political director and also represented University of Houston. So today, I am joined with Joshua Martin, national political director, College Democrats of America, and former. What were you doing at University of Houston, Joshua?
Former University of Houston student body president, the first freshman to ever hold that position.
Okay, so put some respect on his name. I love it. I love it. So Josh and I were talking before we started, when we were just behind the scenes today, and we were just talking about a lot of the gap different, or I guess I don't even want to say disparities, but I think the gap in the relatability of the younger voters versus the old politicians, right? And I know with President Biden, that was a huge thing because everyone was saying he's too old. He can't even relate to some of the issues that young people are dealing with. So, just in general, as you're going out here, as you're talking to these young students, can you give us some of the feedback that the students are telling you?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that young people care about, and particularly affordability, being able to buy a home after they graduate college. That's a really big thing for lots of young people. Climate change is a really big thing for young people because they want to be able to grow up on a planet that's cleaner and raise their children on a planet that's cleaner than the one that they grew up on. Their rights, being able to have access to reproductive health care, that's a big one because lots of young women don't want to grow up in a society growing up with less rights than their grandmothers had. Things like civil rights, being able to make sure that they're able to go and vote in elections and being able to do things like that. So there's a lot of important issues that young people are particularly passionate about. And I think that ultimately candidates, particularly Kamala Harris, represents lots of those values that young people are really passionate about, which was why I think that people are ultimately going to be really excited to go out and vote for her.
So let me ask you this. As you guys are here, okay, because the visual I see is you're on campus, you have all of these young voters just turned 18, they're excited. This is their first election, they're going to be ready to vote in, they're pumped up, or if they haven't, you guys are registering them to vote. So there's this obviously now there's this population of people ready to vote, and then you have a rally or whatever, the voting action is very excitable. But how are you relaying those issues to the candidates? Because obviously you go to a concert, the band's playing, I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be able to vote. I'm happy to be in the concert. But you hear all of these issues. So how are you guys telling the candidates the issues that you guys are feeling like are being overlooked?
Well, first off, I think that's one thing that's really important to note is that this is probably the most excited I've seen young people about a particular election. I got people from all walks. I got cheerleaders coming up to me. I got frat guys coming up to me. I got football players coming up to me, trying to get registered to vote, checking their voter registration, getting excited about this upcoming election. Like I'm in a senior this year at the University of Houston, and this is the first time I get so many people coming up to me. Let me check my voter registration. Let me get registered to vote. I got my little brother coming into campus this semester. I need you to go and register him because I registered the older sibling went in 2 years ago. I've never seen this many people excited about an upcoming election because young people are really excited to engage in the political process. So I think that when it comes to relaying that information to candidates, I get people all the time asking me about what do young people care about. And it's just those everyday kitchen table issues, like how I said, affordability, being able to buy a home. One thing about healthcare is a really important issue to young people, because one thing that the Affordable Care Act does, it protects people from pre-existing conditions, and it also allows people under the age of 26 to stay on their family's health insurance plan until they go and age out, and which is really big because, I mean, the ACA, those are really big because lots of the people under the age of 26, they really aren't able to, afford their own health insurance.
I have two of them.
Exactly. So
and they're not ready at all. So,
exactly. It's really important to young people. So when it comes to relaying that information to candidates, it's just making sure that our voices are heard. That's when it comes to, I always tell people, we got to knock on those doors. We got to make those phone calls, because if you want our voices to be heard, they're going to hear it through our actions. I know one thing that's a really passionate quote from Speaker Nancy Pelosi is, don't agonize, organize. And that's one thing that really, really passionate about. So we do it all the time. When we have student-led initiatives, whether that is registering students to vote just by registering our peers, whether that's doing educational events. I know we do a Know Your Ballot event every single semester where we allow people to come and talk about the different positions and branches of government. So those are very important things. But like I said, young people overall are super excited to engage in the political process. And I think that a lot of candidates are gravitating towards that, which is why ultimately we're going to see an increase in youth voter turnout.
I'm so happy that you said that, because I am always curious about how we are going to bring the younger voters in. So I'm glad to hear that there is a fire that is being lit underneath them and that they're very excited, because a lot of times when I go to political events, I feel that there is definitely a gap with relatable issues. And I'm thinking, why are you guys even talking about this? Like, your focus is on a 50 plus demographic, and we're not the ones that are game changers. I'm not 50. I'm saying older people, but like, they're not necessarily the game changers. It's you guys that are coming in to do that. So I love that. Now, that goes into every week. I'm here, Josh, and I have a little thing that I do where I try to talk about social media and find something that is going viral on social media. And so I know that a lot of our millennials and what are y'all?
Gen Z.
Gen Zs. Okay. Millennials and Gen Zs get a lot of information from social media. And sometimes that can be wrong. It can be biased or one-sided, but all you have to have is a video that looks aesthetically engaging, and you're going to start getting the views, and people believe that. So what I want to do is I want you to watch this video that I think is very interesting for this week, that has a ton of views and has been shared numerous times, and I want to get your feedback on it. So let's watch this week's reel.
You're nothing but a Trump hater, and you're out here trying to get everybody to be tripped up.
Do you think Donald Trump, when he was convicted on all 34 counts, what did you think about that? Because that was
That's me, Matt, and none of those 34 counts is worthless. You got a worthless case. You got a case from the FEC.
Why is it worthless?
It's worthless because there was no crime that was committed.
Falsifying business records with the intent of covering up another crime. Michael Cohen went.
That's what they said. That's what you say.
That's what the jury said. The jury handpicked by Donald Trump's
I
lawyers.
know exactly what you're all about right now. You're not an independent journalist. You're nothing but a Trump hater, and you're out here trying to get everybody to be tripped up. Let me ask you a question. Who thinks these 34 indictments are worth a piece of crap?
You know what?
They're all worthless. You know that. You know that. You know that. You know that.
What, the 34?
The 34 indictments are worthless.
You're saying that our entire. Let me finish.
It comes down to one question. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather have Joe Biden in the White House for another 4 years?
Absolutely. Okay. President Biden's been.
Interview over. I don't want to talk to anybody that has any. You have zero common sense.
You're undermining our entire justice system when you say this jury.
Your ability to elect the next president that's competent.
I'm sorry, I don't want the dude that made his supporters attack the Capitol. I don't want the dude that
made the supporters attack the Capitol.
His rhetoric directly.
He said peacefully walk to the Capitol.
He said fight. He said Mike Pence didn't do it.
Me again, but don't touch me. Don't touch me, my dog.
Dude,
don't touch me.
You're getting in front of our way.
Don't touch me out here. I'm just telling you that. I got questions. Don't touch me, my boy. Don't do that. If you worried about 34, you don't worry about 34 ass whoopings in a minute, boy.
Go follow that rally. Don't bring that bullshit over here.
So this is a very interesting perspective to keep it politically correct,
Hmm.
I'm trying to be nice about it because I don't want to, obviously, if you believe in your Republican candidate and you're pro-Republican, I never want to be the person that's like, only vote Democrat, only vote Republican. But whenever you're looking at videos that are going viral and that are talking about electing a felon and dismissing the charges, 34 counts, convicted, found guilty, felon, and you're saying, you know what, those charges, they don't count. That it's ridiculous. We don't believe that. That's whatever. But if it was President Obama or if it was
Kamala Harris.
you can't have one felony and expect to be elected. So what do you think about this, Josh, and the fact that it's going viral?
I mean, frankly, I think that these people have lost their minds. I mean, just to tell you how it is, I think that these people have lost their mind. You can't just the laws, they apply to everybody, not just some of us. I mean, the laws of the land apply to all of us, and I think that this is a reason why you're seeing a disconnect within the Republican Party. I've known people that come from Republican families that tell me that their family can't support it anymore. They can't support Donald Trump. They can't support the Republican Party anymore because the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party of even 12, 16 years ago. I mean, you look at it, I think it speaks for itself when you have a former Republican vice president, Dick Cheney, that refuses to support Donald Trump. I think it says a lot when his own former running mate won't even support him. When you have former Republican members of Congress, former Republican Lieutenant Governor of Georgia refusing to support him and voting for Kamala Harris, I think it tells us everything we need to know. And I think that whenever you see this, it just shows how out of touch these people are with normal American people. I mean, where normal American people are, they can see that the laws apply to everyone, no matter if you're a former president, no matter how much money you have. You got to understand that this man was convicted by a jury of his own peers. He was convicted on 34 counts. I mean,
not two,
not
34.
not one, not two, not 34. I mean, it was like that's a lot.
It
I mean,
is.
like how you said. I mean, for most people, you can't even have one felony. In most states, convicted felons can't even vote. To where, I mean, if he wasn't from Florida, if he was from a specific state, he probably wouldn't be able to vote for himself. So it speaks for itself about how, honestly, I think, how frankly delusional lots of these people are. And I think that, ultimately, the majority of the country sees it for what it is. And that's why these people have lost so much, because you think about it, these people haven't won anything since 2016. They got absolutely smacked around in the midterms in 2018. Donald Trump was fired by over 7 million people in 2020. In 2022, there was supposed to be some big red wave. He didn't pick up a single Senate seat. So, I mean, that shows for itself that this whole MAGA movement is it's not popular and it's losing. I mean, I say it all the time. I said, it's funny because the last time that Republicans have won, a national election, I wasn't even old enough to drive.
Right.
So, I mean, like I said, I mean, it's clear that, they're not where the majority of Americans are. And I think that that's been reflected after election, after election, after election. And I think that's going to show again come November.
And, you said something and I was having a conversation with someone because I try to make sure that when I come across, I'm not biased, because I want someone to be able to give me their honest opinion so I can hear how you really feel before I say anything, so I try to sort of navigate that where I'm not pro blue and anti red, right? But I do know that it has got to be challenging to continue to support someone and just dismiss that. Like you were saying, you're looking at Republicans who are even struggling to say I support this person because they even know that you can't support him at this point. So I know it's got to be hard. Now, I know with you, and we're talking about you and how you are on campus and all of this. And so you're more on obviously Democratic side, right?
Hmm.
So do you ever encounter any Republican students that are there that are trying to banter with you, or they're like, well, actually, Josh, like they want to fact check you about stuff? Do you ever have any of that?
I mean, you definitely have some people sometimes that, they believe what they believe, and that's perfectly fine. But I mean, the one thing I always say is the one thing about MAGA is that MAGA has no facts. I mean, if you want to go fact for fact on these things, I mean, you can go and look at it. What is Donald Trump's health care plan? He wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act, kick a bunch of people off their family's health insurance, and take away health insurance from people with pre-existing conditions. That is a fact. You go and look about what he wants to do on education. He wants to literally abolish the Department of Education. That is his plan. So whenever you want to go and have a conversation fact for fact, I don't really think it's in their favor.
So I also wanted to ask you this, being someone that is in the actual nitty gritty of being on campus. And so I have another person that is going to actually talk about Project 2025, and we're going to talk about affirmative action. And one of the things with affirmative action is not only just in the workplace, but also whenever we're talking about a collegiate level. So do you feel that that is something that some of our college students and younger voters are concerned about? Do they feel that maybe they won't have the same access to educational resources?
Definitely. That's something that young people 100% care about, because I mean, education is honestly the most important thing that we have, in my opinion, because I mean, education and investment in education is an investment in our future. And that's really important to young people like myself, people in high school getting ready to apply for college, people in my position getting ready to apply for graduate school, law school, medical school, and whatever. So I think that affirmative action is something that is really important to us because, I mean, lots of us sometimes are just asking for an opportunity to make sure that we're able to have those opportunities to propel ourselves into a better future for ourselves, to create a better lives for ourselves and our families. So I think that with that, I mean, you also have the getting rid of diversity, equity, inclusion. I know at the University of Houston, our Center for Diversity of Equity and Inclusion literally went and closed. And as a student, I used to be president of our Black Student Union at the University of Houston. And it was a really big blow to us because, I mean, the Center for Diversity of Equity and Inclusion, they were a really big help for us, whether it was providing resources for events, help providing us a safe space, or even just a place just to go and study, go sit down, talk to people just about what it's like to be a Black student on campus or things of that nature. And now you have it to where literally our African American Studies department could potentially, be in danger of getting shut down. So, I mean, you look at all these things are really important to us. And it's to where, I think that people and Black students and minority students are starting to see it, to where if we don't take a stand right now and go and make sure that we're able to protect these things, that, we're not going to be able to have the same opportunities that previous generations have had. And that's really dangerous. And it's really frightening for a lot of us.
That is such a great point. See, I told y'all that's why I brought Josh here today. That's why I brought Josh here today. Okay, so my last question is basically I want to have a call to action point, right? Because obviously we've identified the problem. So now what the heck we're gonna do about the problem? So what I want is for you to address and send a message or a Morse code, or give us the inside scoop of, for whenever we're trying to have a call to action at this point, what can we do to engage under 30 voters in this election?
Well, the first thing I would say, so my mentor was Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. That was my mentor, and she honestly is the reason why I'm even involved within the political system that I am today. And I think that what's important to know whenever calling people to action is that you don't need some type of fancy title. You don't need some type of fancy office. You don't need some type of, really, you don't need a lot of followers on social media. You can take action right now. You can pick up a phone And you can go call voters in swing states and across our country and in your community and explain the issues that are important to you. You can go pick up a clipboard and you can go knock on doors in your neighborhood and go and tell people about the upcoming election. You can go and talk about the importance of voting, whether you're in the barbershop, whether you're in the gym, whether you're just going to get a smoothie at the smoothie shop down the street. Because this is the most important election of our lifetimes. And we've said it, frankly, my whole life. We heard it in 2016, we heard it in 2020, and now we're hearing it again now. So this is truly the most important election of our lifetime because all of our freedoms are on the ballot. Voting rights, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, not just access to abortion, but contraception as well. All of these things are on the ballot, and they're telling you what they want to do, and they're showing us who they are. So if we really want to make an impact and make a better life for ourselves and our future kids and our future grandkids, then we got to make sure that we have a voice and that we are using our voice because our voice is our vote. And if we don't use our voice, then we aren't going to have a future.
Well, first of all, you guys, this is your next president of the United States. I love that. That is all great points, Joshua. And thank you so much for what you're doing. And again, I know that it's difficult to be in this situation sometimes whenever you have people that are older than you. Sometimes you get these middle-aged candidates and they don't want the young voters to tell them what to do, or they may not want to hear that what they're doing is not the right way. So thank you for still having a voice. So that is Joshua Martin. Thank you so much, Josh, for having a seat at the table.
Thank you so much.